Exposed, 12 spine-chilling secrets of a haunted house that will terrify you to the core. Sarah Whitmore had finally found a place that promised peace. A quaint house in an aging neighborhood, furthest down the tree-lined street. With her teenage son Jake, she was ready for a new beginning, away from the nightmare of her past. But soon, the walls of that house revealed secrets disturbing, spine-chilling secrets, as unsettling shadows crept into their lives that it began with laughter, then turned to silence. One evening, Sarah sat with Jake, reminiscing about all the joyful things they had waiting for them. Laughter echoed through the quiet hallways. But as the sky darkened, shadows crept. She thought nothing of it until strange sounds started to echo. Doors creaked, whispers danced around the air, and their sanctuary became a prison of tension. Jake shrugged it off, but the vibe changed when he sat down at the kitchen table one night, pencil in hand. What he drew horrified her. He sketched shadowy figures pressing against the windows, their long fingers reaching inside. Just anxiety, she told herself. Yes, adjusting. But as time passed, her heart began to race every time a door opened by itself, every time chilling whispers filled the air. One evening, after rummaging through the attic, Sarah discovered a dusty trunk. She opened it to find old newspapers, their pages yellow with age. The headlines screamed of Mr. Fuller, a local figure, vanishing without a trace. Smiling faces in the neighborhood photos were juxtaposed with chilling details of disappearances. Her blood ran cold, the hairs on her neck stood on end. What had she stumbled into? Later, during neighborly conversations, she noticed their faces drain of color at the mention of Fuller. Eyes darted like frightened deer, and anxiety gripped Sarah. It was as if everyone knew something she didn't. They exchanged worried glances, whispering behind closed doors. She felt their fear creeping into her own heart, making her spine tingle with dread. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as soon as she wrapped up the conversation, the atmosphere thickened. She felt more alone than ever, even in the crowd. Seeking answers, she approached a local officer, confessing her fears, clutching the old newspapers in her trembling hands. Just stories meant to frighten, he said, shrugging her off like a pesky fly. Hope began to dissolve, isolation wrapped around her like a vice, the nights grew darker, shadows curled around the corners of their new home. Something was watching. She turned suddenly to find Jake again, pencil poised, frozen in front of the window. His eyes, wide with terror, pierced through her. "Mom, they're coming for us," he whispered, voice trembling. The cold grip of fear wrapped around Sarah's heart, realization flooding her senses. She had to confront whatever darkness dwelt in the whispers, in the shadows. But was it a lurking evil from without, or something far worse nestled among the friendly faces around them? The truth lay just beyond the threshold of their home, tantalizingly close yet impossibly out of reach. The shadows in the house seemed deeper, more menacing. As Sarah flitted from room to room, she felt an oppressive weight crush her spirit. Every creak of the floorboards echoed in her ears like a heartbeat, steadying her racing thoughts. She knew the secrets were there, lurking just beyond her grasp, and she felt a growing urgency to uncover them. Jake wasn't in his room. Panic sliced through Sarah as she called his name. The silence that followed was deafening, and she fought the rising dread within her chest. She rushed to the stairs, heart pounding against her ribs, each step louder than the last. Every instinct screamed that he wasn't safe. When she reached the living room, she found him standing in front of the tall window. Moonlight poured in, illuminating the stillness outside. The air was chill, yet somehow stagnant, laden with dread. He was transfixed, staring out as if hypnotized. "Jake!" she shouted, fear clawing at her throat that he turned slowly, his face pale as moonlight. "Mom," he whispered, voice distant, "they're coming." It sent shivers racing through her body. "Who is coming?" she demanded, stepping closer, but his gaze drifted back to the window. A flicker caught Sarah's eye. Dark shapes loomed just beyond the glass, twisting in and out of view. She leaned in, breath shallow. They were just shadows, weren't they? A cacophony of whispers rippled through the air, chilling her to the bone. It was as if the house itself was attempting to communicate. "Mom!" Jake pulled her arm, his grip like iron. "We need to go. Now." Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed into frantic screams, reverberating off the walls. It was an unholy choir, a mournful wailing that clawed at their sanity. Sarah felt paralyzed by the horror of it all, but instinct kicked in. She jerkingly grabbed Jake's hand, pulling him away from the window. They had to escape. Whatever darkness was outside was less menacing than whatever awaited them inside. They raced to the front door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged as she pressed and pulled with all her might. "Why isn't it opening?" she cried, pushing harder. Her heart thudded loudly, each beat echoing her desperation. "Look!" Jake pointed behind her. Shadows writhed across the walls, forming into distorted faces, all grinning with wicked delight. A low growl rumbled from within, sending tremors through the house. "Stay close!" Sarah shouted, trying to shield him with her body. But the shadows moved in closer, wrapping around her like tendrils of smoke. She felt cold swirling fingers brush across her skin, sending electric jolts of fear down her spine. Suddenly, the whispers stopped, silence enveloping them. It was an oppressive stillness, thick enough to choke on. Heart racing, Sarah closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. "What do you want?" she yelled into the void. A moment later, a voice crept out, soft and seductive. "We want you to know." It trailed off, indistinct sounds merging into one another, a sinister promise hanging in the air. Sarah's instincts ignited. She couldn't let the shadows have Jake. "Find a light!" she yelled, knowing in her heart that the darkness thrived in fear. As she spun, searching the room for anything that could pierce the gloom, Jake shouted, "The attic!" She darted toward the stairs, pulling him along. The shadows recoiled as she moved, but they were relentless, twisting and reshaping into monstrous figures. With every step they took, the ambient temperature dropped, frost creeping along the walls. Until now, Sarah's suspicion had only been a whisper, but at that moment, a chilling thought gripped her. What if the darkness was more than the house? What if it was waiting for her? As their feet hit the final steps, she flung open the attic door. Dust swirled in the air like trapped souls, the dim light barely revealing the relics of years past. With manic energy, she began rummaging through the clutter, heart racing. But as she searched, she felt the oppressive force of the shadows closing in, creeping step by step. Jake's voice broke through her frantic thoughts. "Mom! Do you hear that?" A distinct rhythm tapping. Tap tap tap. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as realization twisted in her gut. That wasn't just the wind. It was coming from the far corner, a hidden hatch, pulsing with ominous energy. "What is it?" she whispered, fear mingling with curiosity. Jake's wide eyes mirrored her own. "Should we open it?" A sudden blast of icy air made the hairs on her arms stand up. Something sinister lay within, urging them to uncover the truth. "Do we dare?" Sarah whispered, her heart hammering with dread. What horrors awaited on the other side? The tapping grew more frantic. "Mom, they're coming!" Jake cried, a tremor in his voice as the lights flickered dangerously. The decision loomed before them, and with one last glance at her son, Sarah took a deep breath, poised to uncover what this attic held and what it meant for them both. Could the secrets hidden below the surface be more dangerous than the shadows hunting them? As Sarah hovered over the latch, she felt the cold breath of the shadows wrap tighter around her, desperate to pull her away. "We have to open it, Jake." We have no choice. They won. Stop. With her heart thundering in her ears, she lifted the hatch. It creaked ominously, a sound that echoed the fears brewing within. Dust bellowed out like smoke, filling the space with an acrid scent. Inside, the darkness swirled, and as the opening widened, a pair of glimmering eyes flickered in the depths. "Mom!" Jake screeched, clutching her thigh. "I don't want to." "Look!" Sarah urged, her voice barely breaking above a whisper. The tapping resonated from within the hatch, now a frantic rhythm that matched the chaos in her heart. It has to mean something. It could be a way out. Yet dread coiled tighter around her mind. What lurked beneath? What had the voices meant when they promised knowledge? As each second ticked by, the shadows pressed closer, eager to consume them. Taking a deep breath that froze in her chest, Sarah reached down and removed an old, rusted lantern from the dark depths. Its glass was cracked but intact, a guardian of light against the encroaching darkness. "If we can just get this lit," she murmured, determination surging through her. "Be careful," Jake said, his voice trembling. She fumbled in her pocket for matches, fingers shaking. But as the first match struck, the flames sputtered weakly, casting ghostly shapes across their faces. The glow was weak and flickered like the shadows around them. For a moment, she couldn't tell if it was the darkness or her pulse racing that seemed to distort the air. "Hurry!" Jake urged, glancing over his shoulder. The tapping transformed into frantic pounding, echoing through the attic walls. "We'll find a way out," she stammered, her resolve growing stronger. She struck another match, and this time it caught, flames licking up and consuming the dried wick. As Sarah raised the lantern, light scattered like shards of glass, pushing the shadows back. But as she illuminated the space, something in her heart sank. The attic was filled with relics of family history, pictures on the walls warped and darkened with age, the faces now twisted, mouths agape in silent screams. "I don't like this, Mom," Jake mumbled, eyes wide with fear. The corners of the room deepened, shadows stretching long like clawing fingers seeking to reclaim their dark dominion. "Neither do I," she admitted, feeling a pang of despair. "But we can't stay here." With trembling hands, she pointed the lantern toward the door that led back down into the house. The shadowy figures were restless, swirling and shifting, aware of the light but resisting its warmth. They writhed, at times appearing to form grotesque shapes, the mouths of those trapped stretching in a malevolent grin, and then, a low voice slithered through the air, almost seductive in nature. "Leave the light, Sarah. Come join us, don't listen." Jake cried, dragging himself closer. The shadows beckoned, painting pictures of promises, but they felt wrong, so wrong. They needed to make a choice, and it loomed like a thundercloud above them. Would they face whatever was downstairs, or could they? Beneath floorboards creaked ominously, a low-spoken chant intertwining with the whispers. "Join us in the dark," it begged. "Mom, we need to go," Jake urged again, a panic-stricken note tightening the words. Sarah's mind raced. The shadows seemed to twist and pulse as if a living thing, drawing energy each time they hesitated. The lantern flickered, threatening to die. Her world narrowed into that flame, the only defense against the dark, yet the suffocating dread poured in through cracks thick and heavy. Could they truly outrun what was hunting them? "Let us go," she shouted, grasping Jake's hand with resolve. As they took their first step toward the door, the shadows lunged, shrieking in rage as they attempted to surge past the barrier of light. The lantern sputtered, dying for a second before reigniting just in time. And then they heard it, a whisper, sweet and chilling. "You cannot escape what's already inside. Run!" she yelled, pulling Jake with her toward the door that led down. Fear fueled their steps, but in the heart of the terror, another voice seeped in, a familiar one echoing in the silence. "Mom, wait. What about the attic?" She hesitated. There was something they hadn't uncovered. The fear coiled once more, sinister and inviting, what had been waiting for them in the dark corners of the past. And what secrets could both save them and unravel the truth buried beneath the shadows? As they teetered on the brink of escape, a scream erupted from within the house, one that unmistakably belonged to their own flesh and blood. "Jake!" Sarah screamed, heart dropping as the shadows surged. "Mom, we have to go," he begged, voice breaking into desperation. But a force, unyielding and powerful, pulled her back. "Not yet," it seemed to say, with a tantalizing promise. And as they stood there, teetering on the edge of fate, the light flickered ominously once more. What would they discover if they pushed forward into the darkness, and could they survive the truth it held? The moment stretched into an eternity, a heartbeat lost in the chaos that surrounded them. The shadows writhed, thrumming with anger and hunger like a beast denied its meal. The air turned ice-cold, turning Sarah's breath into fog. Her mind spun, torn between the horrifying urge to retreat and the desperate need to locate Jake's voice. "Mom, please!" Jake cried, his grip tightening painfully on her hand. The intensity in his eyes burned hotter than the lantern's glow. "We can't stay here." That scream. As if in response to his words, the shadows deepened, curling into a vortex that seemed to beckon her closer. Haunting images flitted through her mind, her family, their faces twisted in agony, drawn into the gaping maw of darkness. It felt like a living nightmare, the very essence of despair tightening around her like a noose. I know," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. But as she turned toward the door, something shifted beneath her feet. The floorboards moaned, echoing the eerie chants rising from below. Panic surged within her, pushing her toward the door but dragging heavy chains of memories that begged her to look back. "How can we leave them?" she thought. "What if someone is trapped here?" With an instinct born of desperation, she reached forward, but the shadows lunged, swallowing the light in one swift, greedy motion. The lantern flickered violently, ominously nearing its limit. The world spun into a confusion of darkness and the cacophony of their desperate gasps. "Jake!" she exclaimed, pulling him closer. "We need to go now." As they darted through the door, shadows writhed like serpents, trying to snatch at them, to drag them back into that consuming void. The world outside the attic descended into an unnatural silence that pressed down on them. The home, once familiar, felt alien and foreboding, as if it had transformed into a prison. Jake looked back, eyes wide with terror. "What if they come after us?" "I don't know," Sarah replied, heart racing against the encroaching dread. She encircled his shoulder with her arm, her grip firm. "We need to find a safe place." They stumbled down the staircase, the wood creaking ominously beneath their feet. Every footfall echoed their rising fear, muffled whispers chasing them as they descended into the belly of the house, a place where shadows lurked, waiting to reclaim their lost dominion. As they reached the bottom, Sarah froze. A specter loomed in the hallway, a dark figure at the far end, standing stark against the dull light filtering from the windows. It pulsed with the same sinister energy that blanketed the attic. Her blood turned to ice. "Who are you?" she demanded, though her voice quivered. The specter's form shimmered, and she could almost make out features, disjointed faces, twisted forms, mouths sewn shut. With a swift jerk, Jake tugged at her arm, breaking her from the trance. "Mom! We can't stay here. Please!" She turned, trying to shake the horror from her mind. Okay. Let us find a place to hide." But every room they checked felt tainted, crawling with whispers that beckoned them deeper into the labyrinth of despair. An icy wind slithered through the halls, cold fingers seeking the warmth of their skins. Suddenly, from above, she heard it again, a voice, soft and melodic, beckoning her with a promise of safety. It hummed through the walls, wrapping around her like silk. "Sarah, come to us," it cooed, but woven within the melody was an edge of threat. "Will you shut up?" she yelled into the darkness, words tumbling out in a burst of angst. "We're leaving." Yet the shadows seemed relentless, closing in on them, and then there it was, the unmistakable sound of a door slamming shut up above. Jake froze, eyes wide, terror etched on his young features. "Mom, I think someone is up there," he whispered. "What if it's the thing from the shadows?" She muttered, fighting against the primal urge to flee. But before she could respond, a chilling howl erupted through the silence, echoing in their heads, making the house shake. It was raw, primal, echoing the terror they felt. The walls seemed to close in, shadows twisting around them like gnashing teeth. "Run," she murmured, heart racing as they darted toward the nearest door, but it felt like every path led them further into a trap. "Mom!" Jake pleaded, clinging to her. But amidst the tumult, Sarah felt the pull of that other voice, almost maternal in its dread, weaving through her, promising something she didn't fully understand, a truth hidden in layers of terror, and as they reached the doorway, the shriek so shrill it could shatter glass erupted again, rattling their bones and freezing their hearts. "What is it?" she gasped, struggling against the fear threatening to consume her. In the darkness, hidden away in the recesses of her mind, a question lingered: what did they truly unleash? Would they find salvation in the enigma that had ensnared them, or would they unravel the truth that darkness fed upon? A chilling thought flickered in her mind as they faced the shadows, poised between horror and revelation. What if the darkness wasn't the enemy at all? The howl dissipated into a harrowing silence, as if the house itself held its breath. Sarah felt the chill crawl under her skin, knotting her stomach with dread. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee. Yet with Jake's small hand clenched tightly in hers, they pressed deeper into the unknown. "Mom, we can't." Jake's voice quivered. Panic thundered in his words. "What if they take us like they did the others?" A cold sweat broke over Sarah as she recalled the faces from the attic, twisted in despair, lost within the shadows. "I won't let that happen," she responded, though her heart sank at the thought of failing him. They peeked into another room, its door creaking ominously. The space seemed devoid of reality, filled only with an unnatural stillness that buzzed with tension. The walls gleamed with a slick moisture, damp like something alive. An old mirror hung crookedly on the far wall, its surface warped, reflecting a world just off kilter. Shadows flickered behind her, tugging at her consciousness, pulling her in with drawn promises. "It's just a mirror," she muttered under her breath, trying to shake the thickening aura of terror. But in the reflection, she glimpsed fleeting figures' faces, pale and pleading. Her breath hitched, and she stumbled back, dragging Jake behind her. "Mom, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice small. "Nothing. We need to keep going." She forced herself forward, but the sense of impending doom followed them, a relentless predator stalking its prey. Together they ventured into the next room. A thick, musty scent filled the air, and the floorboards creaked ominously beneath their feet. Strange shapes adorned the walls, pictures that seemed to watch them, eyes filled with a deep sorrow that followed every move. Sarah shuddered, feeling the weight of their gaze, then she heard it again, the sweet, melodious voice arising from the shadows, weaving through the chaos, deeper this time, like a beckoning lullaby. "Sarah, we are waiting for you." "No," she whispered, her instincts flaring in alarm. "Don't listen to it, Jake." But as they pressed on, the voice began to resonate within her, threading through her defenses, offering comfort amidst the chaos. The promise of safety dulled her senses, teasing thoughts of reunion, of family, and that deep-seated yearning to belong. "Mom, what if it can help us?" Jake ventured, a hint of curiosity mixed with fear painted across his youthful face. "No. We can't trust it." Sarah snapped, clutching him tightly as if to shield him from the seduction of that haunting melody. Every instinct warned her to resist. Suddenly, a thump echoed from behind them. They turned, adrenaline surging through their veins. The door they just passed slammed shut with a bone-rattling ferocity. "Run!" Sarah shouted, her heart racing against the pounding in her ears. They darted to the other side of the room, where a dim light flickered only to reveal a crumbling staircase spiraling downward into the depths of the house. "Down!" Jake gasped, eyes wide with terror. "We have no choice," she replied, tearing down the steps. Each step felt heavier, the air growing more oppressive, a palpable darkness swirling just behind them. As they descended, whispers spiraled around them, a cacophony merging into a chilling symphony. "Sarah, come to us," the voices crescendoed, each echo taunting, promising release or ruin. The ground beneath their feet shifted, sinking, swirling. Sarah could feel the house shifting around them, as if it were alive, aching to consume them. She tightened her grip on Jake. "Stay close." They reached a narrow corridor lined with doors, each one adorned with rusting doorknobs and remnants of what once was. Sarah felt the urge to check each one, an insatiable curiosity battling her common sense, but as she pushed against the first, a loud scream erupted from within. An agonized wail tore through the silence, pulling her closer with an invisible hand. "Mom!" Jake whimpered, tears glimmering on his cheeks. "Hold on," she urged, the walls beginning to close in, shadows flickering as if anticipating a feast. There had to be an escape, a light somewhere amid the engulfing darkness. Then a door burst open further down the hall, revealing an inferno of light. The brilliant glow beckoned her forward, yet as she took a step, a low growl emanated from the shadows behind her, a threat, a warning. "Jake, we have to go now," she cried, urgency surging through her, but as they moved toward the light, whispers escalated into a furious roar, drowning out her thoughts. "Join us, there is no escape, Mom." Jake sobbed, pulling her back. The shadows lunged, tightening around them like a filthy embrace, suffocating in cold. Beneath the weight of fear, Sarah felt an inexplicable pull toward that glowing door. Could it be salvation or their end? As they teetered on the brink of light and darkness, she was struck by a horrifying realization. What if this wasn't a way out? What if it was exactly where the shadows wanted them to go? The light pulsated, drawing them nearer, but behind them the shadows surged, hungry for their souls. With trembling hands, Sarah had to decide: flee into the light or confront the nightmare rising behind them. Somewhere in the distance, the relentless voice whispered, promising truth amidst the chaos, but at what cost? The choice loomed imminent as the shadows reached forward. What would they sacrifice to escape? The moment hung suspended in the air, heavy with dread. Sarah's heart thudded painfully in her chest, each beat a desperate call for survival. Time felt distorted. The shadows writhed, stretching and curling, as if trying to engulf them entirely. She instinctively pulled Jake closer. "Mom, I don't want to. I'm scared," he cried, eyes wide with terror. "Stay quiet. We can't let them hear us," she hissed, adrenaline racing through her veins. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to breathe, to think. They had to make a choice: hurl themselves into that blinding light or retreat into the waiting darkness. A part of Sarah wanted to believe in the light. Maybe, just maybe, it could be their salvation. But another voice whispered, cunning, deceptive, suggesting doom awaited them on that side. "Come to the light, Sarah," the voice sang. It felt familiar, tantalizing. Sarah hesitated, her instincts battling her longing for safety. The warmth of that fire seemed to seep into her bones, but the shadows quivered just behind them, thrumming with a dark energy that smelled of despair. "Mom, please," Jake whimpered again, his grip slackening slightly as he looked at the glow. "No. We can't trust it. We have to move away," Sarah responded, her voice piercing through the chaos. She turned to head back down the corridor. The air felt thick with suffocation as the whispers turned into a collective screech, angry and desperate. The shadows lunged, pressing closer, claws of darkness scraping against her resolve. "Mom, look out!" Jake shouted, pointing behind her. A figure emerged from the dark. A woman, face etched with sorrow, with eyes that seemed to pull at Sarah's heartstrings. Jagged wounds marred her skin, but it was the woman's gaze that froze Sarah in place, a mixture of desperation and longing. "Help us, all of us," the woman pleaded, her voice warped yet melodic. "You can end our suffering. Just step into the light." "No," Sarah shouted, forcing herself to move. "It's not real. It wants to trap us." The shadows shrieked like a wounded animal, hurling themselves at her. Sarah tightened her grip on Jake's hand and tore him away from the woman's gaze, feeling the cold tendrils of darkness brushing her back. "Keep moving," Sarah cried, pulling him toward the last door at the end of the corridor. It loomed before them like a sentinel, marred by age but holding an air of resilience. Just as they reached it, a scream erupted from the darkness behind them, a cacophony of horror and rage. The shadows recoiled, hesitating, sensing something shifts in them. With shaky hands, Sarah pushed against the door. It creaked open, a hesitant welcome revealing a room swallowed by darkness. But this one held a different smell, a mix of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. "Mom, no. What's in there?" Jake pulled back, trembling. "We have to risk it," Sarah urged, adrenaline giving her strength. They jumped through the door together just as the shadows lashed out, swiping at the air where they stood just moments before. The moment they entered, the door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in. They stumbled into the small room, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. It was littered with remnants, old toys, scraps of clothing, and pictures turned face down. But the walls pulsed like they were alive, whispering secrets only the damned would understand. "Is this a trap?" Jake whispered, terrified, but Sarah couldn't answer, her eyes were drawn to the floor. A spiral of symbols was etched into the wood, dark and inviting, swirling into a vortex that seemed to breathe. As she stepped closer, the ground trembled, vibrating with a heartbeat. "Mom! Don't!" Jake shrieked, clutching her leg. "I can't do this. I just want to go home." Terror washed over her as another wave of whispers filled the room, climbing higher, tangling with her thoughts. The shadows pulsed at the door, testing the boundaries of their confinement, ready to break through. "Fight it, Sarah," she whispered to herself, her heart racing. This was not just a house, it was a trap, a lure designed to feed on their fear, but as Sarah felt herself drawn toward the spiral, a decision had to be made. What would they be becoming if they stepped into the void? And what awaited them if they stayed? As the shadows collided against the door with a bone-shaking thud, Sarah knew this was only the beginning. It wasn't just light or darkness anymore, it was choice. And then came a guttural growl from the shadows, deeper and more menacing than before. "Will you join us?" The question hung in the air, waiting for her answer, as the very essence of the house seemed to pulse with ominous energy. In that moment, the weight of every decision loomed large before her. What was lurking beyond the spiral beckoned, and what would they leave behind? Everything was on the line. The air in the small room grew heavier, pressing down around them like an invisible weight. Sarah could feel the pulse of the symbols beneath her feet, thumping in rhythm with her frantic heartbeat. There was no time to think, only to act. "Mom, we can't stay here," Jake whimpered, his breath coming in rapid bursts, as panic clawed at his throat. She knelt, forcing herself to meet his terrified gaze. "We have to find a way out. We'll figure it out together." Her voice shook, but she tried to sound steady, to quell the fear roaring in her chest, but the whispers grew louder, a symphony of madness echoing off the walls. They coiled around her, tugging at her mind, urging, pleading. Sarah shook her head violently, trying to clear the fog forming in her thoughts. She took a step back, trying to put physical space between herself and the swirling darkness. "We can't let it take us." Just as she turned to the door, it shuddered violently. The shadows banged against it, clawing for entry, a chorus of shrill screams and desperate pleas flooding the air. The door shivered under the assault, wood splintering as fingers of darkness probed through the cracks. "Mom!" Jake cried, his voice breaking. "It wants us." With all her strength, Sarah darted toward the symbols, her instincts screaming for her to stay away. But the pulse quickened, rhythmic and seductive, calling her deeper into the room. She felt the walls close in, felt the weight of the house shift, as if it were alive, hungry. "Look!" Jake shouted, pointing at the far corner. Amidst the shadows, a flicker of faint light began to glow, a sparkling mist swirling with possibility. It felt like hope, but at what cost? "Stay close," Sarah ordered, taking hesitant steps toward the light. Each movement felt like walking through thick molasses, the air heavy with dread. The whispers crescendoed, wrapping around her, each one a thin blade attempting to cut her resolve. "Come to me," a voice whispered unmistakably. Jake's heart racing, she turned back, finding her son standing entranced. The resemblance was uncanny, those wide eyes filled with longing, eyes that glimmered with an urgent plea. "Jake! No!" she screamed, tearing him back from the invisible tether, pulling him closer to the light. His expression shifted, confusion flashing across his features as he stumbled back into her. I don't know what happened," he stammered, legs quaking as if the very floor sought to swallow him. Narrow beams of light began to shoot out, battering the shadows. Sarah felt a flicker of hope ignite. "This way. We can reach it." Behind them, the door splintered with a horrible crack, sending shards of wood flying. The shadows surged forward, more frantic and angry than before, like a wolf pack closing in on its prey. "Mom! It's coming!" Jake screamed, shifting closer, nearly petrified with fear. "Run!" Sarah shouted, heart roaring in her ears as they sprinted toward the light. As they drew nearer, the swirling mist shaped itself into something terrifyingly beautiful. It formed the outlines of children, their faces marred by anguish, hands reaching out with desperate cries. "Help us! Save us!" they wailed, echoing through Sarah's mind. "No!" Sarah shouted, her heart clenching. "It's a lie!" With every ounce of will, she pulled Jake back, yanking him away from their beckoning fingers. The shadows writhed violently, the room shaking as the children's faces turned to darkness, longing shifting into monstrous rage. Join us," the voice chanted, filling the air with promises of eternity. As the last of the solid light flickered, Sarah knew this moment held everything: the plunge into the light or the descent into despair. And deep down, even as terror ripped through her, she felt the glimmer of a plan start to form. But was the risk worth it? Stepping closer meant leaving everything behind, including Jake. "Mom, I want to go home," Jake cried, the desperation in his voice cutting through her like a knife. "Hold on to me," she screamed, clutching his hand tighter as they faced the swirling mass of shadows once more. A final decision loomed ahead, and the whispers spun into a chaotic storm, blurring the line between illusion and truth. "Will you join us?" The haunting question returned, echoing through the chaos like a sickened lullaby. As the air thickened and shadows lunged, a dark realization struck Sarah hard: choosing the light could mean losing Jake forever. Before she could decide, something shattered within her, cracking open the vault of her mind. And the whispers grew louder, insatiable and insistent, demanding an answer that would seal their fate. What would they choose? The shadows writhed and twisted, swirling around Sarah and Jake, clawing at the edges of their sanity. The pulse from the symbols beneath their feet became deafening, each heartbeat resonating through the cold, dank air. Sarah felt the weight pressing down on her, crushing every rational thought. How had they ended up here? Escape felt like a distant memory, a fading echo of normalcy. "Mom, it's too dark," Jake whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with fear. Just hold my hand," she urged through gritted teeth, her fingers clenched around Jake's small, trembling hand, a lifeline in this swirling chaos. The light shimmered ahead, pulsing like a beacon even as doubt gnawed at her. With every step, the shadows clawed at them, the children's faces morphing into grotesque masks of anger and despair. "You could save us," they sobbed, voices a horrifying blend of innocence and malice. "Join us please." The air felt thicker now, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head violently. "We can't trust them." But as they edged toward the flickering mist, an invisible force tugged at her, tempting her with dark promises. What kind of life awaited them if they escaped this hell? Would they forever carry the mark of what they endured? Stay with me, Jake. Panic jolted through her like electric current. The door behind them shattered completely, splintered wood raining down like angry sleet. The shadows rushed in, black fingers stretching towards them. Fear pulsed through Sarah, jagged like shards of glass. Mom! Jake shouted, terror swallowing his voice. Gritting her teeth, Sarah pulled him closer. In the fleeting light, she caught a glimpse of a broken doll, its porcelain face cracked and twisted. It lay discarded at the edge of the symbols, and in an instant, memories flooded her backyard: laughter, bedtime stories, the warmth of a family. They couldn't let this place take that away. Jake! She cried, forcing her eyes to his. We'll find a way out together. Trust me. But the light flickered ominously, and for a heartbeat, Jake's frightened expression twisted into something unfamiliar, a fleeting shadow of a smile shared with the darkness. Mom, I want to go to them. No. Fight it. Fear drummed heavily in her chest. She wrenched him back as the children's cries grew more urgent. It's not real, they dragged you down. As she held on tighter, the shadows curled around them like snakes, hissing their promises. Join us, be free, find peace, stop. Just stop. Sarah shouted, fear and desperation bleeding into her voice. She felt something begin to crack within her resolve weakening beneath the weight of heartbreak and fear. Suddenly, the ground trembled, pulsing with the energy of the symbols. Mom, what is happening? Jake shouted, squinting against the fierce light. Stay with me. She screamed again, willing herself to remain strong, to be the protector in this madness. But a cold sweat had broken across her brow, her grip on reality fraying. Then, a realization slashed through the chaos. The symbols seemed to pulse, not just beneath their feet, but inside her mind. I understand, she whispered, doubt wrestling with the truth. The shadows paused, their whispers quieting for a moment, as if they awaited her next move. We have to make a choice, she said, voice trembling. It's drawing power from our fear. If we stop being afraid. She felt Jake's trembling hand growing warmer in her grasp, steadying her. What if we fight back? He suggested, voice small but steady. Together, she affirmed, knowing the risk but feeling a flicker of hope ignite in her heart. The shadows surged, threatening to pull them into oblivion, yet something inside Sarah ignited a refusal to yield. With a shuddering breath, she stepped forward, Jake beside her, as they faced the darkness with defiance. Let us go. They shouted in unison, voices ringing out with a strength that surprised even them. A rippling silence enveloped them, tension coiling tighter and tighter until it snapped. A cacophony of enraged screams erupted, the shadows recoiling. Now! Sarah urged, the darkness shattering like glass around them. But just then, the ground began to collapse, and the symphony of whispering voices crescendoed to a deafening roar. A blinding light surrounded them, but it felt different, threatening and mocking. You cannot escape it, taunted, seeping into the cracks of their resolve. What if it's a trap? Jake's voice quaked, uncertainty flaring anew. Then we fight. Sarah yelled, but fear gnawed at her. Was this truly a path to freedom, or the final snare? As the shadows lunged one last time, she braced for impact. Would they break through the darkness, or would it swallow them whole? This was the moment that would define everything. Would they survive the choice they made, or would they be consumed by the very darkness they fought against? The ground shook violently beneath their feet, and Sarah instinctively shielded Jake, pulling him closer as if her mere presence could repel the incoming darkness. She watched in horror as the symbols on the floor flickered like dying stars, and reality began to fold in on itself. The light hurtled toward them, a white-hot energy filled with agony and despair. No! She screamed, her voice drowned out by the chaos. Shadows writhed with frantic energy, and with every heartbeat, they felt the gnawing awareness of something looming, waiting, just out of sight. Mom, I'm scared. Jake cried, his grip tightening on her hand, the warmth of his small fingers grounding her in this madness. Me too, Jake. But we have to keep moving. she urged, steeling her resolve. They could not falter now. As the blinding light began washing over them, twisting and distorting reality, Sarah's mind turned chaotic, memories colliding violently. Images of her mother, smiling as they baked cookies, the laughter of her family cutting through the tension of the present. She yearned for those moments, and yet they fed the shadows, every connection wrapped in fear. Make a choice. A voice echoed within her thoughts, a strange amalgamation of her own and the whispers of the shadows. Choose the pain, choose us. No. She gritted her teeth, an inner storm brewing. I choose love. I choose my son. Together. Jake repeated, as if their shared will could forge a new path through the darkness. His voice steadied her, and she felt that flicker of hope rekindle. They turned to face the formidable light, and the shadows quivered at their defiance. Let us go, they shouted once more, and the chaos surged around them, the pulsing light intensified, pushing against them, relentless in its pursuit. But this time, they pushed back with every ounce of strength they possessed. Fight! Fight back! Jake screamed, his voice piercing through fear and despair. The ground quaked again, and a deep rumble echoed like thunder across a stormy sky. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in horror. The ambient darkness, once a blanket of fear, flickered hesitantly, as if reconsidering its grip on them, but just as hope flickered stronger, a chilling growl rumbled from below. You cannot hide. You belong to us. It roared, the walls around them vibrating harshly with its rage. What is happening? Jake trembled, eyes darting around as walls morphed into eyes and mouths, stitched together with veins of shadow, each gaze heavy with malice. Sarah could feel the icy grip of panic creeping back in. The ground was alive, a living entity determined to take what it had rightfully claimed. No, no, she muttered under breath, shaking her head violently. We won't succumb. Then a realization shot through her. This wasn't just about escaping. The shadows weren't merely after their souls, they were feeding off something deeper. We have to face it. We have to confront our fears. With hearts pounding, they moved closer to the pulsing light, daring to cross that threshold. Every step was like walking on a knife's edge, a precarious balance of hope and dread, but at the last moment, the light flickered, and for a fleeting second, everything changed. Shapes emerged, spectral figures of children laughing, their eyes hollow. They beckoned, each smile a twisted mockery of innocence, drawing Jake's gaze. Mom, they want me, Jake said, his tones suddenly airy, almost inviting, and he took a small step forward. No. Jake. Don't. The words burst from Sarah's mouth, a raw, primal instinct to protect taking over. The shadows seized the moment, lunging with unrelenting fury, the darkness alive with hunger. Sarah felt the pull, the allure of joining, insisting it would free them from pain. But she couldn't let herself be swayed. Gripping Jake's hand as tightly as possible, she steeled herself. Their courage and resilience felt like flames flickering in a gale, but she hoped it would be enough. What if fear was the true monster? What if they were feeding it as much as it was feeding on them? Keep fighting. Sarah shouted, throwing open the barrier of her mind. The ground beneath them felt like it was about to crumble, but she refused to yield. Would they confront their ultimate fears, or would Jake slip through her fingers into the waiting darkness? As the shadows surged forward, ready to devour, she didn't know if they could escape this time. Just as the darkness seemed to close in, a new sound pierced through the unmistakable echo of a child's laughter. It was sweet, but it held an edge of sorrow, reaching deep into the marrow of Sarah's bones. What was that? Jake looked at her with wide eyes, fear and curiosity battling within. They both froze, the shadows paused, and for a moment, the horror faded. But who was laughing, and what did that sound mean for the both of them? In the midst of the chaos, Sarah felt a surge of determination. Jake, listen closely, she said, looking deeply into her son's eyes, those brave, captivating eyes. We need to remember who we are. We are stronger than this. The shadows waited, writhing around them, but there was a flicker of hesitation in their movement, as if the shadows themselves were afraid. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped toward the swirling light once more. "We choose love, not fear. We choose family." Jake nodded, his grip tightening around her hand. "Together." As they shouted those words, the ground beneath them reverberated, sending out waves of energy. The symbols that had once pulsed darkly now lit up with a blinding white glow, illuminating the room and casting shadows backwards. The air thickened and felt alive with power, every inch vibrating as if the house itself was gearing up for a climactic showdown. Unsure if it was strength or desperation that fueled them, they charged forward into the bright swirl, the shadows recoiling as though burned by the light. They felt the warmth envelop them, wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. But then came the chilling growl, more transfixing this time. "You cannot escape what was always meant to be." The walls trembled, and the room threatened to spiral out of control. "Stay focused," Sarah urged, recalling memories of warmth, Jake's laughter, the scent of baked cookies wafting through their kitchen, shared stories during bedtime. Each thought sparked the warmth of love within her, refreshing her spirit. "Think of home." In unison, they called out, "We are not afraid." And in that moment, the shadows spiraled in disarray, losing their grip on reality. The dazzling light, brighter now, filled every crevice, purging the darkness inch by inch. The swirling entities shifting into faces, tormented and lost, asking for release. "Help us, Sarah," their voices sang, sorrow steeped with longing. "Do you hear them?" Jake asked, fear gripping his voice. "Those are the ones trapped. Jake, if we respond to their cries, we tie ourselves to more pain. We can't." That plea echoed in her heart, but a flicker of doubt lingered. Was it that simple? But then the children's laughter rang through again, pure and joyful, dancing through the air, softening the edges of their despair. "You can save us. Just take our hands," they beckoned, tempting both of them into the depths. "No," Sarah shouted, her resolve hardening like iron. "We free ourselves first." With each heartbeat, she felt the pulse of their unified strength grow stronger, pushing against the shadow's vice grip onto their lives. In that moment, she grasped Jake's hands tight, and they recalled every shared story, every laugh. "We are more than this house." Together, they pushed forward through the light, hands clasped tightly, calling on the strength of their family bond to drive them forward. Momentum built inside them, and the air exploded around them as they entered the blinding light. The shadows surged, a final desperate plea echoing around them, "You will pay. You cannot escape your fate." But Sarah felt it, an inexplicable connection to life, love, each heartbeat resonating through her soul. Just as the darkness closed in, the light enveloped them fully, purging the pain and the hurt in a single, exquisite moment. The pressure vanished. They were outside. Looking around, confusion washed over Sarah. The house loomed behind them, now just an ordinary structure, light spilling through its windows like warmth through glass. It was suffocating no longer, but a home ordinary, and cheerful. A near-familiar live oak swayed gently in the breeze, sunlight glimmering through its branches, birds chirping, bringing the world to life once more. "Mom, we did it?" Jake asked, amazement filling his tiny frame. Sarah fell to her knees, embracing her son. "Yes, sweetheart. We're free." Tears of relief spilled down her cheeks. She felt light, carefree for the first time in what felt like forever. Maybe the darkness will always linger at the edges, but they had each other, they had love. And for every dark night, there would always be dawn. As they strolled away, hand in hand, she vowed to never let fear overshadow joy again. This was the cherry on top of their adventure, a newfound lesson of light they would carry into every moment of their lives. "Let us go get ice cream," Jake chirped, a grin stretching across his face. "Absolutely, my love. Let us celebrate our new beginning together." With laughter dancing on the breeze, Sarah felt hope bloom like flowers in spring, a reminder that not even the deepest shadows could cage the warmth of their life's greatest light. This is it, folks. Thank you for being on this epic journey with us. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss what's next, where we reveal even more thrilling tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to back us up and show your support. The algorithm loves it, and so do we. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. You're part of the community. You matter. And if you love this story, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see it. Let us keep the adventure going together.